G'day and welcome to Beyond Sobriety, an unofficial AA podcast. This is a place where you will hear real stories of recovery and resilience. I'm Michael and I'm an alcoholic, your host and fellow journeyer on the road to sobriety. As someone who has walked the path of addiction and found solace in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, I understand the challenges and triumphs that come with striving for sobriety. And it's with this understanding and empathy we've created this podcast. Our purpose here at Beyond Sobriety is simple yet profound, to provide a platform where individuals can share their experience of alcoholism openly and authentically. Through candid conversation, personal narrative, and expert insights, we aim to inspire hope, foster understanding, and offer a beacon of light to those still navigating the shadows of addiction. So whether you're someone in recovery, a loved one supporting a friend or family member, or simply seeking insight into the journey of sobriety, you're in the right place. Join us as we embark on this transformative journey together. I'm Michael and I'm an alcoholic, and this is Beyond Sobriety. Welcome. All right, g'day. We have Darrel here in the seat. Say g'day, Darrel.
Hi everyone. Hi Michael. My name's Darrel and I am an alcoholic.
Hi, Darrel. How long have you been sober for?
So my sobriety date is November 2017. It's not my first sobriety date. My first one was March 2016. I didn't drink in between those dates, but I was using a substance that affect my sobriety and later on come out in a step 5. And the sponsor I had at the time asked me to change my sobriety date to when I stopped using that substance, and also make an amends to the home group I had at the time for my dishonesty.
Oh, there you go. Did you know you're doing something a bit shonky with that? I mean, obviously, we're alcoholics and we focus on alcohol, but really it's any substance that touches us or affects our mind. Was it just young naivety, or was that more of a, trying to pull a bit of a dodge?
No, nothing to do with being dodgy. Alcohol I've always been powerless over, but other things I've been able to put down whenever I wanted to. But that was just something that I didn't think was an issue at the time as far as my sobriety went.
No, fair enough. So I guess your vice is just mainly alcohol, whereas some people have gambling, they've got pills, they've got cocaine or whatever it might be.
Yeah, well, that's why we have different things like GA or NA.
Absolutely. So can you describe the attitude towards alcohol in your family when you were a child?
Look, my father drank at the end of a working day. He was a working man, and there was never like an issue with alcohol in the home at that stage. My mother never drank. But as far as my attitude went, I remember as a kid in primary school getting out of the Healthy Harold bus, saying to myself, I'm never going to drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes, and I wound up a drunk in Alcoholics Anonymous smoking cigarettes.
There you go. Well, smoking's a filthy habit. I'm glad I don't have any filthy habits like that. You said that when you were younger, you kind of vowed that you wouldn't smoke, you wouldn't drink, but you ended up doing both those things. What was your journey to lead you to do that? Like, was it a soft thing? Was it just both feet jump in, or how did that end up happening?
In high school is when I started doing stuff. I first started drinking. I was stealing alcohol from my dad and drinking it at school before school. Like I didn't have money or means to be able to go buy alcohol, so that was the only way I could get it. But when I was about 17 is when I really started drinking, and like from then it was a problem. I was drink driving on P plates, and I got done drink driving twice on P plates. But it was something for me that progressed over years, and my behaviour around it became worse, and I ended up been drinking in isolation, not thinking that drinking in isolation was a problem, or have an understand of what I was doing was wrong, and like I always drove.
So is that from the very start? Like, I mean, with I guess my drinking journey didn't start until my late 20s, but I mean, like I assume most people, I got drunk a bit in high school. I had the odd, party and things like that. Was it just like that, or was it a problem from the word go?
Look, for me, I call it a problem from the word go. As the years went on, it definitely progressed and become worse and worse. In my early 20s, I'd go out binge drinking, but it always felt like I was doing something wrong. I didn't know how to party. For me, party was going out and getting blind. I never had a good time. That's just a part of partying. I didn't know how to socialise, but I needed alcohol to be able to socialise. Alcohol was the thing that gave me power to do things that I wanted to do, or just do basic life stuff.
So when did you start drinking in isolation? You said you'll just do it by yourself. So obviously there came a point where you were partying, you're with your friends, and you said that didn't feel right. You always felt like you're doing something wrong. But then when did it start to feel like you had to hide it?
I think I was like 25 or 26 when I started drinking in isolation. And at that time I had a girlfriend. I didn't live with her or anything, but I'd finish work and go to the bottle shop, and I'd drink in my car, sit in the car park and drink in my car, and go from car park to bottle shop and different bottle shops, because I didn't want to go back to the same one the same day. And then I had a bit of a different route. There was 3 different bottle shops I'd go to in the same day, and just hang out in different parks in my car.
Would you say you were a daily drinker, or was it, on different occasions?
No, I wasn't a daily drinker. What I certainly wasn't capable of was controlling my drinking. It talks about this in the big book, about the powerlessness, and I was never capable of stopping or staying stopped. In my early 20s, I think I was 22 or 23, I had a period of a few months there where I was dry, and around that time, those years, I was trying to stop drinking. I didn't know why, but I think I recognised it as a problem, and I'd stopped drinking for a little while, and my life got worse, and I got I was very angry. I experienced more fear. I didn't know what fear was at the time, or understand what fear was. I thought fear was things like afraid of heights or afraid of drowning, stuff like that. Not things like being afraid of disrespected, or being unloved, or not being liked, different things like that. So going to the shopping centre without alcohol, that self-centered paranoia would kick in, and I'd be like, oh, people are looking at me, they're judging me, when what I'm doing is I'm looking at everyone else and judging them for who they are, how they look, how they walk and dress, and all that stuff.
Did you have any times where you were actively hiding your drinking from you said you had a girlfriend or your parents at that time, and I guess was there any confrontations that took place?
Look, I never had any confrontations, or I never really had anyone say, Darrel, look, I think your drinking's a bit out of hand, this and that. I lived with my parents. Whenever I'd come home drunk, I'd come in through the back door, because we lived on acreage, so it wasn't like you had to hop a fence to get through the back door. So it was, in that way, it was a bit easier to sneak in the house and bypass people with when you're drunk. And as far as my girlfriend went, at the one I had at the time, she never said anything. Even when I was at my bottleneck, I was in a different relationship, and she never said anything either. But they weren't around all the time. Those people weren't around all the time to see the full extent of my drinking. I would just drink by myself, but they would only see me have maybe a 4-pack.
So like you'd get tanked a little bit before, or they didn't see the starters?
Yeah, they didn't see the 8 before it. They only seen the 4 after the 8.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I did the same thing once. I went out to a party, a work party, and I had about two bottles of wine on the train on the way there. And then everyone's like, oh, you got to catch up. And then I had 4 or 5 shots of Hennessy. And yeah, so they didn't see the 2 bottles of wine beforehand just to get me to the front door. But that's crazy. What's the most extreme length you've gone to get a drink?
It's probably just drink driving. Like the worst I was drink driving is when I was that intoxicated that everything was just spinning, and even when you do the one eye closed, one eye open, it didn't make it better. You know, like a 5-minute drive turned into like an hour escapade because I just couldn't drive. I couldn't see straight, and I kept pulling over and trying to make myself regurgitate to try and make myself feel better just so I could get home.
Fair enough. We went down to Melbourne and we had to isolate during COVID because you had to isolate for 24 hours or until you're in negative test. And I was there stuck in my mother and father's little house, and they've got a dry house. So I was going, what am I going to do for 24 hours without a drink? So I said I was cleaning the car, which you have to do after a long trip. We're in Melbourne, so we're cleaning out the car, and I set up an account with BWS, and I got them to deliver a bottle of vodka to the house next door, and I just happened to be there at the same time and picked it up. But it was the most stressful thing I've ever done because I couldn't have them find out that I was drinking at all, let alone to excess. So that's probably the hardest thing I had to do. But I got away with it, and I was able to hide it in the garage. So that got me through until the negative test came through, which I guess that for an alcoholic, that's all that matters, isn't it? In the next drink.
Oh, definitely getting your first drink and whatever follows after that.
So what was your rock bottom? What made you think that I've got to do something about this?
Okay, so the first time I come to Alcoholics Anonymous was in 2014. I just been dumped in a relationship. You know, I'd reached out for help with my drinking, been dumped in that relationship, and so I come to AA and like I wasn't able to identify as an alcoholic. Like when I first walked in the meeting, the greeter greeted me and asked me if I was an alcoholic, and I said I had a problem with alcohol. And at the time, that's what I believed the extent of my issue was, that I just had a problem with alcohol. So I left that meeting and went back out and drank for another 2 years. And I got to the point in, I think it was 2016, where I had like suicidal thoughts, had attempted suicide. Like I was going nowhere. Like I had goals and dreams, you know. Like I always look up at the night sky and see a plane flying. I'll be like, oh, I wonder where they're going. Why can't I do something like that? Or always wanted to save and buy a house. My drinking always took over that, overruled it. Because that's what came first. You know what? I worked to drink. I worked to be able to afford to drink. So my lowest point was realizing that I'm going nowhere in my life. I have nothing. I'm achieving nothing. I wanted something better than what I had.
I was reading a book the other day, and this the author of the book was saying that instead of having a defining rock bottom moment, she described it like falling down like a chasm within the ocean where there's different depths as you just go lower and lower. And I mean, like I can really relate to that, and sounds that's that's similar to what you're saying. Like, it wasn't really necessarily a defining moment where you found yourself, woken up in the gutter or beaten up or in jail or woke up, didn't know what happened and you'd killed a family, where you go, man, this is the lowest I can go. But it's more of just a gradual descent into, I guess, the madness of alcoholism.
Yeah, how far down the scale must one person go before enough is enough? And what defines a person to be alcoholic? I often hear that people's their thoughts are that an alcoholic is a person that living in the park drinking out of the brown paper bag. But that was never me. I never lived in the park. I only drank in it. But I didn't have a lot of stuff. I had a car, I had a dog and a girlfriend. I had a job, but I didn't have anything else.
It disguises itself, doesn't it? Yeah, I used to say the same thing, except I always thought I'd end up living under a bridge. And, I used to see people like that in Parramatta where I used to work. And you see the guy under the bridge just with bottles all around him. You go, oh, look, that person has a problem. But you sneaking it in the car, what we both did, on the way home from work, because we're professional or we got a good job and we're somewhat stable, we're fine. But it's that cunningness of it. So when you're on the verge of getting sober, what were there any fears? You talk about being fearful of going to the shop and not having a drink. What about getting sober?
Yeah, so my journey of getting sober was, as I mentioned, I first went to AA in 2014, and I'd also gone to see my GP and spoken to him a few times about my drinking and that. Fast forward to 2016, and I've been drinking for 2 years and hit that low point of, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to live this way anymore. It's not just about giving up drinking. It's wanting a better way of life, wanting to have a life. I went back to the GP and he had, I told him what was going on and he'd forwarded me to drug and alcohol services. And I had made an appointment with a alcohol counsellor, and I was also working with a fellow who was sober, had quite a long time up of sobriety, and he had mentioned AA to me again. I'd completely forgotten about AA then. So he gave me a lot of support in going back to AA and getting sober. Like, he could see what I was far better than I could, and that was just the delusion of alcoholism. You don't see what you are for what you are. For me, that first week that I went to AA, I got my dates mixed up with that alcohol counsellor, and I ended up in an AA meeting, and today I'm lucky I did, because just my experience with counsellors, they haven't been able to help me out a lot with alcoholism, unlike AA has. But getting sober, it's definitely a scary thing. For me, it was definitely scary. I was always a shy person, and first getting sober, I was like, I wasn't just shy, I was terrified. I no longer had the power of alcohol to be able to put that cape on and be the superhero that I wanted. I just couldn't live that way. Without that, it was like, I don't know how to do life without that power of alcohol. And all my dreams and aspirations, like going on a nice holiday, sitting on the beach, I'm drinking. The dreams of having a nice home, I'm sitting in my nice home looking at my tropical fish tank, drunk. But I was never, like drinking, I was never able to achieve those things. Getting sober, it was, how do I achieve these things? How do I just get through the day without dying. That was what it was like.
Yeah, it's crazy. I can really relate to that. I walked in the rooms the first time and I'd hear people go, I've got, you know what, I wasn't impressed by the 10 years or the 20 years or the big ones. It was the 2 or 3 weeks, the people who stand up and ID in their first 90 days. I'll just go, how the hell? I couldn't go 24 hours. The clock hit 3-4 o'clock and it was time to drink. And the idea of not or having a day without it filled me with terror. It's just crazy how it does it to you, that mental obsession. What was one of your high points in sobriety?
Okay, so I've had a few high points in sobriety. So one was the first time I went through the steps, and when I was about around step 9, I think it was just after I'd started making amends and started to experience a different sort of happiness, something that I hadn't experienced before. And what I was starting to experience was having relationships with people, which was something I never had before. What was actually happening to me is that I was coming out of my shell. I'd been relieved of fear and social anxiety, and I was able to connect with others. So that was one high point. Another one was when I gave up smoking. That was something that I'd tried to do, give up cigarettes for a long time. And so I was quite happy about doing that. I got married in sobriety. That was a big thing because I never wanted to get married. When I was drinking, I never believed in marriage or relationships, and I had a low value of women. And as I got sober, that woman that I married, I was in that relationship when I was drinking, and as I got sober and like a few years into sobriety, and that all those old beliefs shifted. Like I started to respect women and people more, and that included myself. I started to have different values. I just experienced different emotions. So like I got married in sobriety, but another high point is that I also got divorced in sobriety. For me, like that separation was like, it was at the time it was a low point, but what it done for me is that it showed me a lot about myself and different areas that I needed to grow. It also led me to seek professional help from a counsellor who helped me see some truths about the way I was living my life and myself and the relationship with my parents and how that had formed me in a way, and it showed me some self-defeating principles. And I was able to take all this stuff and do some solid inventory in step 4, find a new freedom about myself. What I also didn't realise when that before that marriage ended, which I realised afterwards, is that I was codependent. So when I was by myself, it was having a good hard look at myself and what I need to do to survive. Because at that low point, I wasn't in a good place. It was, at the time, it was all about just me surviving, staying sober, putting a roof over my head, putting food on the table, taking care of my dogs, and also growing as a person emotionally and spiritually. And the growth I got from that as a result of that marriage ending is invaluable, and it was definitely worth that relationship coming to an end.
Yeah, you know what I noticed about that entire thing was that during that entire time, you never said that you felt like picking up a drink. You know, I guess it just shows the fortitude of the program and going, look, you know, in that whole narrative that you just gave us, there was nothing to do with going, I felt like drinking, I felt like this. It was working on it yourself and figuring things out for yourself, and then actually even coming to a point going, look, I might have been married, it broke down for whatever reason, but I'm going to work on myself through this and deal with the problem.
Yeah, to drink or to do something worse like suicide, that's just a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And what we have in AA, the program of AA is designed for living a new way of life, and it's not just about stopping drinking and getting sober. It's about remaining sober and how to deal with life's issues in a way that I don't need to drink, or I don't need to go to extremes, and I can try and stay emotionally stable. Something that as big as like a marital breakdown, like it was definitely challenging. Like I experienced depression and anxiety, and from what I understand today, there's normal stuff when something like that happens. And like I'd even lost my appetite, and I'd lost a little bit of weight, and I was having trouble sleeping, but like all that stuff shifted as a result of applying the program. Like I did in the beginning when that stuff happened, like I did take back control and push God away, and I started blaming AA and God and this and that and myself. But after like some time, I'd realised that wasn't God's fault, it wasn't my fault, it wasn't AA's fault or anyone else's fault. That was between that woman and me. And what I believe today is that God had gone, all right, Darrel, I'm going to bring you and this woman together. And when things come to the end, I believe that God said, all right, Darrel, this is going to hurt you, but it's going to be the best thing for you, and separate us. And that's what I believe. And for me, I definitely do believe it was the best thing that has happened to me in sobriety, because it's helped me find a new freedom, but also live a better life. I was living a very robotic life, and for me, it opened my eyes to what I was missing out on.
You mentioned God. What's your understanding of God? Because I understand this can be a bit of a touchy topic for some newcomers, and with some past trauma of religious experiences on some people. I know what my higher power is. What's yours?
Okay, so I don't come from a religious background. My parents aren't religious. I did scripture when I was in primary school, but I pulled the pin on that pretty quick. But I just don't believe in religion. Some people do, and that is their business. Long before I come to AA, I remember I was at home one day on a weekend. It might have been a Sunday, and I think I had some Mormons knocking on the door. And they were talking about stuff and that. And I remember the part of the conversation that I'd said to them that I believe that there is something more than this. I don't know what it is, but I believe that there is something more. So when I come to AA, like I never had an issue with the God word. To me, it's just a 3-letter word. Some people use higher power. It is written in the text. The words higher power is written in the text. But as it says in the big book, a God of your own understanding. And very, very early on in sobriety, when I was first going through the steps, that God business is when I thought of that word, I would think of the religious God, this big dude with a beard, kind of looking like Santa, but dressed in sandals up in heaven. And I was like, well, that's not what I want to believe to be God. So I used the sun with the belief that it brings warmth, it brings light, and you need it for things to grow. At the time was just the image to replace what had been painted for me when I was a kid. But it's not what I believe in today. Today I can't explain to you what God is. It's not something I can see, touch, or feel. Like I've felt God's presence, but I can't physically feel God. I can't it's not like I can shake your hand. But it's I definitely do believe in the God or a higher power. Something that was a good experience with just how small we are was when I went to the observatory last year, and they show you how small our galaxy is in this universe. And like, yeah, there's definitely got to be something else.
Well, I'm a bit biased. Some of our listeners might know I'm a fairly religious guy. Yeah, so I definitely do believe in God as well. But, you know, everyone's experience is all different. But it's a big realisation, especially for some people, to come and go, look, it's a fairly big premise of the program to understand and believe that, you know, we're powerless over alcohol and we need to rely on that other entity, whatever you want to call it. Was there any other big realizations that you had about yourself or about your relationship with alcohol during your AA journey? So, like any kind of big pin drop moments of, oh, that's why I did this, or that really affected me in this way because of.
Throughout the years of my sobriety, there's always been moments of realization about myself or my life, or different things. That's something that regularly happens. I think it's a result because I'm someone that continues to work the steps. I've been through the steps, I think it's 5 times now. So I've always having continued growth and different insights about myself and my life and my behaviours. As far as anything that I can pinpoint, like not off the top of my head, but you know, there's always a penny that drops. You know, every now and then you'll be like, oh yeah, that's pretty good.
That's crazy. You've done the steps 5 times.
Yeah, look.
In how many years?
It's 6, I think. 6 years. 6.5 years.
You're a stepaholic, mate. So you'd recommend the steps then?
I definitely recommend the steps. And I definitely recommend going through the steps more like on a regular basis. You know, for me, when I need to go through the steps again, I start to experience the RITs, restless irritable discontent. After the first time I went through the steps, I just had a feeling, you know, I got intuition that I needed to go through the steps again, and I went to my sponsor and just said, "Hey, can we go through the steps again?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." For me, it's I've always found a new freedom in going through the steps each time, you know, and seeing different stuff about myself.
Is it a continual thing? So you just start and then finish and then start again, or?
No, like I'm just about finished going through the 12 steps. You know, I'm halfway through Dr. Bob's Nightmare, and then that's about it. And continue to work steps 10, 11, and 12. When I'm due to go through the steps again, I'll know. Like I'll trust that God will give me a knock on the door and say, "Hey, Darrel, you need to go through the steps again with your sponsor."
You mentioned a sponsor. How did you find your sponsor? Was it like one of those Harry Potter moments where the wand finds you, or any great revelation? Did you see that?
Look, it's nothing like the Sword in Hat. You know,
Slytherin.
No. Look, I've had a few different sponsors over the years. My first sponsor, I was too scared and afraid to ask someone for help when I first got sober. And that first AA meeting I went to, which became my home group, it was a recovery meeting, and they used to talk about the suggested things. You know, get a big book, a sponsor, do the steps, get a home group, and a service position. I think it was my second week there, I got a big book. I wasn't capable of going up to someone saying, "Hey, will you be my sponsor?" But I was fortunate enough to have someone there that was another member stitch me up with a sponsor. And I remember she said to him, "This is Darrel, he needs help." And my thinking was, what? I'm not that bad. And you know, that was just a delusion that I lived in, thinking I wasn't that bad. But you know, like today, as mentioned, I've had a few different sponsors. You know, today, the sponsor I have, I was more than capable of going up to and asking that person for help and for sponsorship.
Your family and friends, are they aware that you're an alcoholic? Did you have like a coming out moment where you had to tell people? How did that go for you?
Like before I was sober, I never really had any friends. Like there was two guys that I was friends with that through work, and one of them helped me come to AA, and was well aware of my drinking. My girlfriend had no idea of the extent of my drinking. She just thought it was normal. But as far as like my family knew, like when I was at my girlfriend's 21st birthday party and I was dry, I was trying not to drink. I was always trying not to drink, but I was very hungover. I'd got absolutely hammered the night before. And so I was at this party, my mum was there. I was sitting there talking to my mum, and I told her, I've been having problems with alcohol, and I'd gone to see the doctor, this and that. But when I was in step 9, I made amends to my mum for I'd stolen money from her and dad. So I made an amends to her, and mum has always been a supportive person to me, but she was quite happy and supportive of me being in AA. My dad had said to me, "Oh, you're not an alcoholic," and whatever his perception of an alcoholic is, I don't know, but I believe I'm alcoholic, and following the principles in Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a better way of life and kept me sober. But as far as my friends go, I don't have many non-alcoholic friends. Most of my friends are in the fellowship. I got a co-worker that I've worked with for 13 years who knows I'm in the fellowship, and I've made amends to him when I've been through the steps. The first time I went through the steps, he doesn't quite understand alcoholism, but he doesn't need to. He's not an alcoholic, so he doesn't need to understand it. He doesn't need to get it where I do.
Looking back on your journey, what are you most proud of with your any accomplishments that you've had in sobriety that you wouldn't have been able to achieve that while you were drinking?
See, that's a question that makes me need to think. How dare you do that to me?
Hey, I gave you the questions about 3 or 4 days ago.
Oh, look, I'm flat out trying to remember my own name, let alone a list of questions. So as far as achievements go, look, sobriety is I like to think it's a gift that keeps on giving. The program is something you're only going to get out what you put in, and for me, if I do the work, I get the results. And what the results are is a life beyond my wildest dreams, and it's one that's happy, joyous, and free. And I'm free of that bondage of self, which is that insanity within my mind that I used to live in. When I was living with my parents, back when I was drinking, even in early sobriety, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I'd be disgusted in myself, and I would constantly bring myself down. And I'd have to look away when I'd brush my teeth. But like today, I can look at myself in the mirror, and I can love and accept myself for who I am. For me, that's a pretty good moment to go from thinking so little of myself and feeling worthless to being in loving and accepting of myself. But I've got many achievements in sobriety. Like I've bought a home. I've been on holidays. I've gotten better within my job. I'm in the same job as when I was drinking, and I've grown a lot within my job and my abilities and my self-confidence. And not just within my job, within myself, I've grown a lot as a person. For a long time, I felt like a boy. Even when I was in my early 30s, I felt like a boy. But there was a point in sobriety where I had outgrown that. I'd grown into feeling like I am a man, and being proud of who I am, and being confident of who I am, and just different stuff like that. The relationship with my mum, I had always had a lot of resentment and anger towards my mum, and in sobriety, mum was always very challenging. As a kid, she was very smothering, and never, I needed a bit of space, but she never gave it to me. And so many years in my early sobriety, I always kept mum at arm's length. When my marriage ended and like going to that counsellor, one of the things I've had learnt through going to that counsellor was about the relationship with my parents and how that grew me into who I was. So learning to accept my parents for who they are and loving them for doing the best they can, and just being able to pick up the phone and call my mum because I want to, not because I need something from her, or inviting her over to my home and just having like some food with her or something simple like that is like it's a pretty good thing to be able to have the desire to want a relationship with your mum when most of your life you hated her.
What advice, and this is my final question, what advice would you give to anybody out there that's listening that's struggling with alcoholism? What advice would you give them and what you've learned throughout your time and your struggles?
So for the person that is having trouble with their drinking and wants help, if you're desperate enough that you do want a better way of life, just look up AA. There's AA is everywhere, and get to an AA meeting. But for the person that's the family member or closest to the alcoholic, you'd wanna have a look at Al-Anon. That would be able to help you out.
Well, thanks, Darrel. Thanks for your time today and sharing your story so openly. We really appreciate it. And as we close, we're just going to say the Serenity Prayer together. So if you want to kick us off.
All right. God,
grant me this serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thanks for your time, mate.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for joining us here today on Beyond Sobriety. Before we wrap up, I'd like to leave you with a gentle reminder. If you happen to recognise anyone who shared their story on this podcast, I urge you to respect their anonymity and privacy. Let's create a safe space where individuals can feel empowered to share their experiences without fear of judgment or disclosure. If you found today's episode helpful or inspiring, I encourage you to share Beyond Sobriety with someone who might benefit from it. Together we can spread awareness, support and hope to those still struggling with alcohol addiction. Remember, your feedback is invaluable to us. If you have any thoughts, suggestions or stories you'd like to share, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on anonymousAA01011990@gmail.com. Thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, stay strong, stay sober, and remember, you're not alone in this journey. I'm Michael, and I'm an alcoholic.